Okay, so it's time to continue the old corporation tier list, and I'm gonna do the 5 Venus ones since those are getting released and they are the next chronologically. So yeah, quick overview of the tiers. Some playables are the ones that are unplayable. Need to hand are cards that are only good with a very unlikely hand, and even with that hand they're not gonna be very good. Needs a hand, it's sort of a lesser version of that, where the hand is just basically more likely to happen. Playable are corporations that are always playable. High combo potential corporations that are decent without a hand for them, but with a very good hand they can be better. Always solid, like it says, and the best are corporations that are always solid but have something that just takes them over the top of the rest. I do a more clear explanation of the tiers on the first video in the series. Check that out up there. And yeah, let's go with the Venus ones. So let's start. I did the basic ones with the base game. I'm gonna start here with the Venus expansion, ignoring just using them with the base game, even though like 2 of them can be used with it. So first off, Aphrodite. I've been waiting for this to do a little rant on how fucking shitty this corporation is. This is the worst corporation in the game. None of these other corporations, I don't even know some of them that well, but none of them are worse than this one. It just makes no sense. Venus and plants are not related at all. On top of that, 1 plant production is useless unless you get more plant production, because you're like it takes you 8 generations to build up enough for a plant. Or let's say you can hit an ocean or something, pick up 3 plants from the board. It would still take you 5 generations to get there, and you don't even produce on the first generation. So because you don't start with any plants, so that you're just gonna get your plants blown up. Basically, that's all Aphrodite gets you. Your plants blown up a couple of times, and then at the end of the game, you'll get 3 or 4 extra plants. And then the Venus stuff, I mean, the bonus isn't all that terrible in Venus. You can get 30 cash from it if it gets Terraform, which is on the higher end of the Venus, but you can't draw any Venus cards. You have no guarantees that it's gonna be Terraformed, and it by itself it's not enough. So it's the worst corporation in the game. Does it get better after Venus? There's no preludes that help it. Well, I guess a couple of plant production preludes, but those aren't the best ones. So not a lot of help from preludes. And then the other thing, once you add colonies and turmoil, I'm just gonna talk about both at the same time, because when you play a game with all expansions, Venus gets touched like 5% of games, something like that. Maybe less. I've never seen it get like no one plays Venus. You don't get enough Venus cards in your opening hand because there's too many cards, and at that point, yeah, no one's gonna go for Venus after you don't go for it from the beginning. So basically, you have no bonus, and so and your Venus tag is kind of useless. So yeah, this is the worst corporation in the game. It gets so much worse with the expansions. It's crap. It's just nothing's gonna be low. Like, I don't know how to put it. I should put it here. You know what? Get the fuck off my tiers, Aphrodite. Okay, moving on. Celestic. Okay, so Celestic, it's not too strong. I would say my instinct on it is that it needs a hand, right? Yeah, I would put it here. Okay, so it needs a hand, and then once it gets it's not that overpowered with it. But I did some math with this one. I did more hypergeometric distribution stuff, and so Venus has 13 cards with floaters, but 5 of those are useless. They either just place floaters on a card, or like Stratospheric Verts requires that you remove a floater, and that would count as a floater card. So there's really only 8 cards that can take floaters in a useful way with Celestic, and yeah, and then I would say you would need at least one of those 8 to play Celestic, and then when you draw, you'd like to draw as many of those as possible. So I did the math, and counting the 13 cards, there's a 41% you see at least one in your hand, 28% chance that you see one of the 8 good ones. So that's not too bad, but it is slow. Like it's slow. Like I mean, much like Ecoline or UNMI or Inventrix, they just need a little help. So I think 28% is low. The good news is that the two cards you draw, you have a 84% chance of drawing at least one. So 53% of drawing one, 31% of drawing two, and only 16 of not drawing any. So it's pretty high. You're probably gonna get one of the good ones there at least. There's half the odds are that you get one, and a good third that you get two, right? So that ability really saves Celestic, but then that's the other thing, that there's no really I mean, floating hubs is probably the best one. I really like local shading early, or dirigibles, but yeah, early floating hubs, it's gonna get you 10 points. That's nice. You're gonna put a bit of money into it, but it's gonna get you 10 points, so that's real nice. But that's, yeah, so basically then Celestic is getting you 5 of those 10 points, right? And that's less than Priestar gets you, probably less than Arclight gets you, and the same that Viron would get you, except you're paying a little more. So yeah, it's needs a hand, and then it's not even that great afterwards. But then let's talk about colonies. So colonies added again 13 cards that have floaters, and again 8 that I believe are good with Celestic. It also added like cards that it either plays floaters or do weird stuff with floaters that are not really good for Celestic, and I think these floater cards are better. On the downside, a few of them do require 2 floaters to do their action, but there are things like Redsport Observatory. I think it's a better version of Aerial Mappers. Jupiter Floating Station actually becomes quite decent. You get it fully charged, I mean to 4 in 2 generations with Celestic, and then it's like you're producing 4 cash, right, every turn. So that's pretty good. And then Titan Floating Launchpad, you trade for free the whole game with it. So you don't need the energy with Celestic. You just trade for free the whole game. And you can even use the floaters to put in something else if you get the energy. Admiral Collector's pretty decent, right? So a lot of good cards here. The other ones, they place 2, so they're a little less more underwhelming with Celestic. But I work out these. I think this group is a little better, but the odds don't take that into account because there's still 8 playable ones. But it is less diluted, so with Celestic, the odds of getting one of the 26 is 58%. The odds of getting one of the 16 good ones is 40%. I think 40% is quite high, so yeah, that's pretty good. And then after you draw your 2 cards, after you get one of the decent ones, the odds are pretty much the same. You get an 85% chance that you get at least one, so which is 50% that you get one, 35% that you get 2, 15% that you get none of them, and you also get Titan, right, which places floaters on cards. So really, there's just so much flexibility for Celestic and colonies. I will move it up to playable. I'm not sure I would put it higher than Thorgate, because remember, Thorgate in colonies just gets to trade so easily. The other thing about Celestic is that it activates Titan immediately, which is usually good. It could help another player, but the fact that it activates it immediately means that if you can't get your card that takes floors down early, then you can get a charged up Titan. You can drop a bunch of floors on it. So Celestic is really good. Well, not really good. I would say playable. I'm not gonna move it all the way up to high combo potential because, again, other than Jovian Lanterns, I don't think there are many cards that just Jovian Lanterns are still 1 to 2 points, right? And you need Titanium to activate it. I think it has a lot of nice effects, but it's definitely not gonna compete with some crazy combos, right? So yeah, I think it stays playable. I don't think Turmoil affects it very much. It's nice to have a Venus tag in Turmoil for the Unity Party, and I think Celestic's strategy with colonies and Turmoil will align with the Unity Party quite a bit. because you're probably going to do a lot of space things that require titanium. You're probably going to play some Jovian cards because those have floaters. So the Venus stack is pretty good there. I don't think it's enough to move it anywhere. So I'm going to leave it there playable right behind Thorgate. I do think the energy from Thorgate is just better with colonies. And yeah, that's it for Celestic. But definitely an improvement in colonies. Colonies kind of saved this corporation for me. Manutech. I think Manutech is really solid. I think it's probably the best corporation in this expansion. Think about it. Like, it starts already with you know, 2 steel and 1 steel. Sorry, 1 steel and 1 steel production. And just think about your productions for a whole game. Like, what do you usually land on cash? Maybe 15 to 20. Metals, maybe 2 or 3 of each. I mean, assuming you're going for a production game, right? And let's say you don't go for heat or like that alone, that's 15 extra cash. And say you have 3 titanium, that's 9 more cash, and 2 steel, that's 4 more cash. That's 24 that you get passively, plus the one you get at the beginning, right? So sorry, I did that math horribly. It's 15 plus 9 is 24, 28 with the steel. But also think of the plants at the end. That's the thing that, like, you don't even think, you think more of money production, but you can get an extra greenery. Just keep stuff like insects and NRA. You can get an extra greenery with Manutech, which is pretty insane as a bonus. And I totally get why this corporation starts so low on cash. But the thing is, like, once you get going, then like it starts playing production cards positively. Discounts are big with Manutech, especially generic discounts like Earth Catapult, and then the other thing is multipliers like Satellite, Stall Station, Cartel, or all the ones that come in Venus like Luna Metropolis. All of those are way more playable with Manutech. Some of them I've played like 2 generations from the end, and I know, like, play Cartel for like 6 Earth tags. In the penultimate generation, it'll be 1 positive, and you'll probably have an Earth discount at you know, at that point, or a global discount. So yeah, it's too good. I'm not sure I would put it past Reactor because of the low starting capital. It can be a hassle to get out of the early game, especially without preludes. I think preludes actually helps it because you get production preludes, of course, like something like Metals Company, or even Business Empire. So Business Empire is just 6 production. It's like you basically nulls out the -6. So yeah, I would put it here for the base game, but I think with preludes it just goes over to Reactor. And then the other things, like, it can get things like donation, which, like, its biggest weakness is definitely its low starting cash. But yeah, preludes help with that, and most preludes do production, so it just gets so much better with preludes. I don't think colonies does a lot for it. I mean, when you place most of the colonies, you get a production of that resource. But that's once, it's not significant, and I don't think Turmoil does anything at all for it. None of the parties help a lot with it. I mean, probably you'll like Mars first, but then you might not be placing tiles. Like, you're not ground early. It is like a ground late corporation because of the planting that I mentioned. So, you know, you build up your income, probably mid game play some cities maybe. And cities are much better for you, again, because the cash up front. But then once you start, like, you get to 8 plant production, that's an extra greenery that you get. You know, that could be 3 points, plus all the cash that you get all game. So yeah, I wouldn't say Turmoil really helps it. Like, it doesn't do greeneries early for the greens. It does. You don't have to do, like, tiles are expensive, so you really want to focus on efficient production cards early, there's a bunch. You're gonna get a lot in your hand. I wouldn't put these ever on high combo potential because you always get production cards in your hand, right? Yeah, And then late, I like to go for ground game, but you can stay engine. Look, you can stay engine just with a huge income. If you get some card draw, get a bunch of points. It's all doable with Manutech. It's really flexible. I know it has a building tag and a steel production, but it's any production. You can do heat with it, and you get probably an extra heat step with it, and then a bunch of other stuff when you do other productions. One really good side effect with energy, maybe you have something that like development center, you can play the energy card that turn, and then play development center and then use the energy that you generate. Same thing with oxygen bumpers. You're a couple energy short, you probably can get to use it a turn earlier. So I think Manutech definitely the best corporation in this group. Yeah, and so the best so far. I wouldn't put it up here because the bonus is good, but it's not that good, and the starting cash is a little low. But I do think with Preludes it does jump here, and Colonies and Turmoil don't really affect it, but it just stays here up top. Next up, MSI. So MSI starts solid. I think MSI starts above Celestic. Because, well, one of the best things about Venus Next is those late game cards, Maxwell Vase, Venusian Animals, and Stratospheric Birds, right? And the fact that you get -2 steps on something like Stratospheric Birds, that's only 4 Venus steps, right? And you're gonna draw a bunch of 3 Venus cards. You could terraform that really easy and play a really early Stratospheric Birds. Of course, you can combo that with things like adaptation technology or special design. I'm not a huge fan of either of those 2 cards, but if it is for Stratospheric Birds, 4 gens earlier, I would definitely play them. The other thing is that it just a lot of synergy with itself for MSI. It's you're gonna draw Venus cards that terraform Venus, and then some other Venus cards that require Venus, because that's how Venus works. It's a very self-contained expansion, and MSI was the strong Venus corporation when it came out. That +-2, it's I know it seems like a weak bonus when you compare it to Inventrix, but it's much better than Inventrix, and that's why I have it a tier above. They're so similar. It gets 5 more cash, which is really good. That's the other thing. It starts with a lot of high cash. Now, and Inventrix bonus is obviously better because it does these and way more, but I would take the drawing the 3 Venus cards and the Venus. MSI is, I see a Venus card, I'm going for Venus, I know I have a Venus guy. Right? If I don't see a Venus card in my hand, it's not really a corporation that I would recommend. Obviously, the starting cash is decent, but then the bonus could be useless for the whole game for you. And the 3 Venus cards could be shitty because a lot of Venus cards are shitty. So I'll leave it in playable. I can't move it up to high combo potential. Could it be high combo potential? I mean, the Stratospheric First is a high combo potential. And you could draw it, so I'm gonna say base game high combo potential. It gets no help from Preludes, right? And a lot of corporations get stronger in Preludes, which hurts it. But where it really gets hurt, it's again when you add Colonies and Turmoil. So unlike Celestic, which focuses on floaters, which were very present in Colonies, MSI doesn't really have anything to do with floaters. A lot of Venus cards have floaters, but without you being able to place an additional floaters, which is what Celestic Door does, all of the Venus ones are pretty weak, pretty much, or at least basically average, except floating haps, and then that's not even anything crazy by itself. It's a few points, but that's it. So yeah, it doesn't get any help from Colonies, but more importantly, with those 2 expansions, there's too much stuff going on in the board, and if people don't get MSI or Celestic, no one usually goes, well, Celestic not even necessarily, so it's really hard to see someone going for Venus when you're playing with all expansions. it nearly never happens. MSI is the only reason that it happens, so if you go for Venus, you're probably gonna be going for it alone, which makes it a lot harder. So I just have to move it down here to playable. And it's also just a lot less likely that you get a Venus card in your hand, right? Because you've added like 49 cards for colonies, 7 for preludes, and like 16 for turmoil, plus a bunch of promo cards, out of which none of them has a Venus tag, right? Yeah, I think it's 0 of the promo cards. But like when you put together all the promo cards, including the big box and the ones that came with turmoil and the seasonal ones, 0 of them have Venus tags. So it becomes like really diluted. And while Celestic gets stronger, like with colonies, I would definitely go for Celestic over MSI. Before colonies, it would definitely be MSI before Celestic. But yeah, MSI just doesn't get any help from colonies, and it just becomes really unlikely that anyone else goes for Venus. So yeah, it just suffers. It used to be really cool, but in this team expansion that's coming up next, it's a really good option actually. It's probably the second best, maybe third best. Which brings me to Viron. Now, I've said before, Viron is my favorite corporation, and I am actually not an objective person for the most part. So just cards on the table, you know. So I might be definitely overrating it. But you know, I did my math in the last video, and what we saw there was Viron. It wasn't that unlikely to get a Viron card. Like, my initial instinct would have been to go needs a hand, because Viron, it looks like it needs a hand on the base game, but once you add all the Venus cards, it's 73% to get a tap card. And unlike Celestic and MSI, I feel like some of the base game cards are really strong, and you can actually get a lot from it. Like all of the, like AI Central alone, to me moves this up to high combo potential. Like now the odds of getting AI Central, like we saw that in the previous video, it's 3%. But the odds of getting it throughout the game are much higher, and you can do other things to begin the game. Any card draw with Viron is awesome, basically. So yeah, I just was even surprised when I was working on my previous video that it's 73% to get one of the good Viron cards, or at least playable Viron cards, is pretty high. And then when I checked the odds for like getting one between the second and fourth generation, if you didn't get one in the starting hand, that was 80%. So to me that moves it, that I can put it in needs a hand. Like I said, I'm not objective, but I think 80% is decent enough that I can go high combo potential. I'm not sure if I can go always solid, but let's talk about Preludes, because Preludes didn't do anything for Viron. Prelude 2 might, but Prelude didn't do anything for Viron, none of the Preludes tap. I think with Prelude 2, Viron is actually gonna go much better, because I think I've already seen some tap Preludes, but tap draw a card on a Prelude makes Viron OP. Well, maybe OP. Again, I'm not objective. So yeah, Preludes didn't do much for it, but colonies, like I said, this funny thing about Viron, whatever Celestic can do, Viron can usually do better. So colonies, most of those starter cards that I mentioned do the same thing or better. So Red Sport Observatory, same thing. Jupiter Floating Station, same thing. Titan Floating Launchpad, same thing. You can all of these let you trade, get a card, or get money. Atmo Collectors, now you can get it's with Viron, this is a 2 titanium production card per turn with just 15 cash, which is the same as that Vesta Shipyard, right? So 2 titanium for 15 is pretty good, but you can also do 3 energy, and that you can trade, like it's more flexible. So Atmo Collectors becomes really good with Viron. But then the three that I really want to talk about, the one that don't get that much from Celestic, Titan Shuttles, Titan Air Scraping, and Jovian Lanterns. Those are all really good with Viron. So Titan Shuttles, by itself, can get you 4 titanium per turn. That's 12 cash on a 23 card. It could pay back in nearly 2 generations. It also has a point in Jovian. So if you're going space, like, that's a no-brainer. And then at the end, it can actually just get you points because it places on other Jovian cards. That would probably be the next one that I'm going to talk about, Jovian Lanterns. Now you need 2 titanium to activate it, but it's getting 2 points. It's basically a 1-point animal. Except you have to pay 2 titanium, right? On the bright side, it comes with a terraforming rating and 2 floaters. So it comes with basically 2 points. And that turn, if you have Viron and 2 titanium, you can place 2 more points. So you can get 4 points from it on the turn it comes down with Viron. And then it's also a Jovian tag, which means it's gonna get more points. So Jovian Lanterns becomes pretty much insane with Viron. You get more cards that just give you a turn, a point. Sorry, this one gives you 2 points per gen, which there's only a few animals that did that. And then Titan Air Scraping is a little worse. You only pay 1 titanium, but you're getting 1 terraforming rating per turn. And 2 points to begin with. So, I mean, I always prefer Jovian Lanterns to Titan Air Scraping because it gets double the points, and that's ultimately what I want from an expensive Jovian. But those 3 are just so much better than Celestic, so much better with Viron than Celestic. And then that's not even talking about like other cards that tap that have nothing to do with floaters, like Martian Zoo or Sub-Zero Southfish. And then Turmoil added a Martian Media Center, which is really good for delegates. Like, it really lets you focus on strategy. I don't think Turmoil did a lot else for Viron. I'm not sure I can put this in always solid, but I think it does move to the top of the high combo potential. Definitely like high potential if you get AI Central or something like that, but there's just so many floater cards in colonies. Really good cards in the promos. Also bought a bunch of decent tap cards. A lot of them with asteroids that I don't like as much, but it didn't bring along a lot of decent tap cards, and with Viron they're all kind of playable. So yeah, I think it's the top of the high combo potential. This could definitely be my bias, but I mean, it's undeniable that Viron has a high ceiling with good tapping cards. The thing that kind of shocked me, because I initially was going to go for Needs a Hand, is how likely you are to actually get one of those cards, which is 73%. I didn't do the math with colonies, but it's probably higher. Just because the density is higher. So yeah, but yeah. Anyway, that's it for Venus. So overall, I would say Venus is a bit stronger than the base game. Well, okay, let's be fair. We need to represent every Venus here. Let's put it back there. I really love Manutech and Viron, basically. And they take 2 of the top 5 spots. Celestic and MSI, like, they're average. And Aphrodite is the worst corporation in the game. The thing about Celestic and MSI is that they're average, but they really are dependent on Venus, and they get much worse with colonies. But yeah, that's it for my tier list. I hope you enjoyed it. Yeah, I'll see you next time.